Well, welcome to Britain's Newsroom, and we're going to get stuck in straight away because joining us now is the leader of Reform UK's Doge programme, Zia Yusuf. Zia, thank you so much for joining us this morning. You must be delighted by the start of this Labour conference. It is being completely driven by Reform's policy agenda.
Well, the reason why it's being driven by our agenda is because Reform, because Nigel Farage actually listen and have the finger on the pulse of the British people and the British electorate and are coming up with practical solutions for the issues and problems that affect their lives on a day-to-day basis. And in contrast, you have a Prime Minister who has just kept up the tradition of smearing and belittling anyone who says, you know what, mass untrammeled immigration to the tune of millions and millions of people that came here against the wishes of the British people are racist. And the fact that this continues is actually almost beyond belief, but actually is very believable when you place it into context, because there was a Survation poll done by Sky, which showed that the majority of Labour members, the majority of the people at that Labour conference of which you speak, want Keir Starmer to resign. Those are the people Keir Starmer is talking to when he refers to anyone who raises legitimate concerns about immigration as being racist.
Zia, I pull you up on what Reform UK's policy is when it comes to scrapping indefinite leave to remain for non-EU citizens? What is Reform's policy on people coming from Hong Kong, let's say, or Ukraine, who have been given specific rights to come to the United Kingdom under specific refugee status schemes?
Yeah, sure. So let's address those in turn. For people who came here from Hong Kong on what's known as a BNO, O being overseas territory visa, those people, a significant percentage of them would qualify for that renewal of the work visa that we're talking about. We're talking about introducing a 5-year renewable visa. For those that don't, there will be a humanitarian route available to them. And I want to be clear as well, there will be a path, there will continue to be a path, of course, for people to become naturalised British citizens. In terms of the Ukrainians, there isn't a path. Those visas do not have a path to ILR, actually at the request of the Ukrainian government, no less. So those people are not in any way subject to the policy we're talking about. But let's be clear about this. Last year alone, people watching this programme had to pay £9 billion last year alone in the form of taxes to pay for universal credit welfare payments for people who are foreign nationals. And that number is going to balloon over the coming 5 to 10 years as a result of this Boris wave. The 3.8 million people who came to this country, despite Boris telling everyone he was going to reduce immigration, he instead turned on the afterburners. And there is an enormous cost to that. The cost of that is hundreds of billions of pounds. It is unconscionable, absolutely unacceptable to expect the people watching this programme to have to shell out to pay for those people to live off the state for the rest of their lives, which is what happens when you grant them indefinite leave to remain. So our policy is simple. We expect, and Nigel Farage, if he's Prime Minister, he will expect migrants to pay their way, speak English, and not commit crime. The fact that Keir Starmer thinks such a policy is racist says far more about him than it does about the British people.
Now, you make the point that a huge proportion, more than half of the migrants who've come over here under the so-called Boris waves are not net contributors. They're earning less than the median salary. But the fact is that many of those people are working in essential jobs for the NHS, for example. They're maybe earning low salaries and therefore getting their salaries topped up by universal credit and other benefits. But nevertheless, they are performing essential roles. Some people are concerned that if they were all forced to leave in a very short space of time, it would cripple the NHS and social services. What's your response to that?
My response to that is, in our policy announcement, we explicitly introduced the concept of an acute skills shortage visa. These are visas that would be issued to people who are fulfilling functions that have a national critical role, and the people you're talking about would fulfill that. But here's what Reform are going to do differently, that for some insane reason has not happened for decades in this country. For every single one of those visas that are issued to fulfill an acute skills shortage, a commensurate accelerated training place must be created for a British person to ultimately fulfill that role. And in doing so, what happens is that short-term foreign labour that is needed to be brought in to fill those roles ultimately breeds long-term capacity. We've had the opposite in this country. We have 6.5 million people. Miriam, you know this better than anyone because you're across these numbers. You've done a lot of work in the welfare space. 6.5 million British people currently claiming out-of-work benefits, only a third of whom are even actively seeking work. One of the reasons why this is the case is because business has the ability to turn on the taps to unlimited, dirt cheap foreign labour. And we have a message for business. We are pro-business, we want business to thrive, but we are putting them on notice. If the British people see fit to deliver a reform majority at the next general election, and Nigel's the Prime Minister, the era of unlimited, dirt-cheap foreign labour to undercut British workers is over.
Well, Zia, speaking of business confidence, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is expected to use her speech at Labour Party conference to claim that Nigel Farage, if he was Prime Minister, would go on a borrowing spree, disrupt the labour markets and rip up an EU-UK trade deal, unfunded spending commitments. How much business confidence do you think there will be in a reform UK government, considering what the Chancellor is expected to say?
Well, Rachel Reeves talking. I'm sorry, I'm genuinely finding it difficult not to just laugh because Rachel Reeves has been spending money like a drunken sailor. Look at the cost of borrowing. Look at 30-year British gilts. They've reached multi-decade highs, much higher than they were even during Truss's prime ministership. We have a chancellor who spends money like a drunken sailor, whacks it on a credit card, and here's the crazy thing. British people's lives are getting demonstrably worse as a result of that spending. What Reform are about is saying, listen, we're going to get government spending under control. We're going to cut out the enormous amounts of waste, the crazy numbers of billions of pounds, for example, spent in quangos, the tens of billions of pounds spent on net zero at the behest of this insane net zero religion that so many in Westminster seem to be in hock to. We're going to reduce that spending. Nigel will deliver well north of £100 billion of cuts ahead of the next general election. We will lay those out for the British people and financial markets to see, and in turn we will then reduce the tax burn commensurately, I want to stress this, commensurately and in an orderly fashion, commensurately with those cuts, to start to allow British people to breathe again and to allow people to keep more of their money and to stop this insanely profligate government from wasting it.
One of the main reasons for that growing deficit is, of course, the state pension and also unfunded public sector pensions. It's also causing quite a lot of generational strife between younger people who think they'll never, ever get a state pension or a funded pension. The other two main parties have committed to keep the triple lock. What's Reform's policy on that?
Nigel's already said that what we're currently doing is we're looking at it. Nigel's reserved his position on it. I will say this too, Miriam. Reform is the only party of the parties with a realistic shot of government next time around who actually has pretty even support cross-generationally. The Tories basically have no support below 40 years old, and the Labour Party have virtually no support above 40 years old. Reform are polling at 23% even amongst 16 and 17-year-olds, and that goes all the way up to awesome pensioners who have done so much for this country and pretty commensurate throughout. So one of the major social contracts that needs to be repaired in this country, Miriam, is the social contract between the younger generations and the older generations. Reform are the only party with a realistic shot of doing that. And this is one of the key reasons why we've announced this immigration policy. Our young people, over a third of our young adults are still living at home with their parents. This is a catastrophic failure to launch because young people can't even afford to rent a home anymore. Forget about buying a home. That used to be something to aspire to. Now simply moving out of your parents' home into rented accommodation is beyond the realms of achievement for so many British young people. This is a catastrophe, and simply shipping in, opening up our borders, allowing dirt cheap foreign labour to come in and undercut those young people is simply unfair, and Reform will not tolerate it.
Okay, Leader of Reform UK, Doge, Zia Yusuf, thank you for joining us.
Well, joining us now from the Labour Party conference in Liverpool is GBNews presenter Andrew Pearce. Andrew, lovely to see you. You've made it out of Paddington. What's the mood like at the Labour conference there in Liverpool?
I've got to say, it's bleak because they are shell-shocked at the unbelievable collapse in support for the Labour Party. There's never been such a fast, rapid decline in support in the polls for a governing party, particularly, Miriam, one that won with a landslide just 14 months ago. A poll yesterday showing Keir Starmer the most unpopular Prime Minister since records began back in 1977. I think his approval rating is minus 67%. That's even more unpopular than Liz Truss was at the height of her problems, and she only lasted 49 days. So Labour activists are baffled, they're confused, they think that the Labour leader is pushing too close to Nigel Farage, and then we get him saying yesterday that some of Reform's policies are racist. We're going to get the Home Secretary today announcing tougher rules on migration. There are so many conflicting signals here, because I think the truth is they just don't know how to deal with the Reform surge, and it is Reform that is dominating every single meeting you go to, every fringe meeting. They're talking about the threat from Nigel Farage. Nobody, it has to be said, are talking about the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, and the Conservative Party. It's all about Reform and how Labour deal with it.
Andrew, have you spotted Andy Burnham anywhere at the fringe events today? I suppose he's probably getting a bit of attention as well.
Well, he has, and there's no doubt many people here, including, I'm told, Andy Burnham, think he's probably peaked too soon. It was one thing to give an interview to the New Statesman saying, I'm thinking of running, but then he gave an interview to the Daily Telegraph, and he spoke at a fringe meeting yesterday and conspicuously kept the cameras out. So he's obviously trying to be a bit coy after the event. But of course, in this modern world now, everybody has a camera. It's called their telephone. So he was filmed saying he's not backing down. But I do think there's a sense that the king across the water, as they call him here, has probably played his cards a bit too early. But the fact remains, if you look at the polls, he is way ahead of Keir Starmer, who most Labour Party members and supporters would think would make a better Prime Minister.
That is an extraordinary poll, the fact that more than 50% of Labour members actively want to get rid of Keir Starmer, not just disapprove of him, not just dislike him, but actually think that MPs should act to oust him. Andy Burnham is not currently an MP. If there were to be a leadership election now, he couldn't stand. Are there any other names being talked about as potential successors?
People are still talking about Angela Rayner. Can you believe it? Angela Rayner, who's not here, the deputy leader that was, the one who resigned just a few weeks ago, when her name was mentioned on one of the stages yesterday by, I think it was Steve Reid, the new housing secretary, there was a large and sustained roar and cheer from the conference floor, the biggest cheer of the conference so far. I mean, it's inconceivable that she could come back as leader right now, but maybe 2 or 3 years' time. But what people are saying, Miriam, is come May, there's going to be some bruising local elections when Reform almost certainly will win Wales. They'll make gains in Scotland where they've not been strong before. There'll be a lot of big gains from the Conservatives in England, and that's when the pressure will be both on the Prime Minister and on Kemi Badenoch. But the truth is, it's very, very complicated and difficult to unseat a Labour leader, let alone a Labour Prime Minister. I mean, just think how long they stuck with that loser, Jeremy Corbyn. 5 years. This guy won an election only 14 months ago, the biggest majority since 2001. So he's not going anywhere just yet.
Gosh, well, Andrew, we'll be joining you throughout the programme from Liverpool, but for now, thank you very much.
Considerably easier to oust a Tory leader, isn't it, Cameron? Maybe
yes.
They should be learning from the Conservative Party.
Well, I remember Labour politicians criticising the Tory government last time for switching their leader so often, and now they're considering doing the same thing.